Welcome to the deep dive. You've sent in some really interesting material, a lot from the anatomy of a civilized world, and today, well, we're tackling a word we throw around all the time, civilized. What does it actually mean for a world, a society, even a person, to be civilized? We're going to try and pull out the key bits, the essentials.
Yeah, the building blocks.
Exactly. It makes you pause, you know? Have you ever really stopped to think, what are the absolute must-haves for something to qualify as civilized?
It's a huge question. Philosophers, historians, they've been wrestling with it forever. And what's interesting from the material is that civilization isn't just one thing.
Right.
It sort of works on two levels. It's the process of a society developing, getting more complex, refining itself.
Okay, the journey.
But it's also used to describe a specific state, like a society that's reached a certain, I suppose, advanced stage.
Okay, so process and state, that makes sense. Academically speaking, then, when they look at that process, that journey, what are the key signs they look for? What shows a society is moving along that path?
Well, the academics focus on these big shifts, things like urbanization and the growth of cities. That's central.
Right, people coming together.
Yeah, and with that comes, social hierarchies developing, people specializing in different jobs.
Makes sense, division of labor.
Exactly. And interestingly, the source mentions leisure time appearing, at least for some people, and naturally advancements in arts, sciences. Those are pretty key indicators too.
And I guess underlying all that, you need some way to actually organize everyone, right?
Absolutely. The source really emphasizes complex sociopolitical organization. Basically, the ability to govern yourselves. That's fundamental.
Right. Self-government. And the source gets pretty specific about what that looks like in practice, doesn't it? The nuts and bolts.
It does. We're talking established governmental institutions, the actual mechanics of running things.
Okay.
A public bureaucracy to carry out decisions. Then there's the need for self-defense, being able to protect the society.
Sure.
And maybe most critically, a published legal code and a real commitment to the rule of law.
That rule of law piece feels huge. Everyone under the same laws.
It's foundational. Plus, things like honoring contracts and even recognizing international law come into play.
But, as we list these criteria, the material warns us straight away. The word civilization itself, it's kind of loaded, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. That's crucial. There's a real risk of bias. Ethnocentrism?
Meaning?
Well, what one group sees as advanced might just be based on their own culture, applying that everywhere else.
Yeah.
Well, it can be unfair, even demeaning to other ways of life.
Which maybe leads into how we use it casually. That advanced state of human society idea, high culture, science, industry. It sounds okay, but there's a judgment there, right?
There really is. It implies this sort of ladder,
Yeah.
Some societies are up here, others are down there. That's where the technical definitions from archaeology or anthropology can be helpful, maybe more objective.
Okay, so what do the archaeologists and anthropologists look for on the ground? What's the hard evidence for them?
They tend to look for these large, complex societies, often built on domesticating plants and animals.
Agriculture, basically.
Yes. And the source even mentions, rather starkly, the historical domestication of people in some cases. Beyond that, systems for recording information writing is the big one.
Right.
The development of exact sciences, monumental art, architecture that lasts.
Like pyramids, temples.
Exactly. Evidence of importing raw materials shows trade networks, clear class interdependence, suggesting specialized roles. A state religion often appears, and crucially, state structures that persist over time.
And the source points to a specific starting point for a lot of this, right? The Neolithic Revolution, then the Urban Revolution in West Asia.
That's where the roots seem to be, yes. And it's interesting how civilizations tend to concentrate power.
How so?
Power over nature, think irrigation, large-scale farming, and historically, power over other people, too. You see it in elaborate agriculture, impressive building projects, technology, currency, taxes, regulations, and that deep specialization of labor we mentioned.
And the word itself, civilization, comes from civitas, Latin for city.
That's the root. So the most basic definition is just a society made up of cities. It highlights that shift to urban living.
But we can't shake that historical baggage, can we?
No, and we shouldn't try to ignore it. The source is clear. That civilized versus uncivilized split, especially in Western thinking, has done real damage.
It wasn't just descriptive, it was used to justify things.
Precisely. Colonialism, imperialism. The idea of a civilized Europe was often used to rationalize dominating other cultures, labeled uncivilized. Understanding that history is vital, if we want to use the term thoughtfully today, moving beyond those old biases.
Okay, so acknowledging all that complexity, all the historical issues, does the source find any common thread, any fundamental aspect that keeps cropping up?
Yes, and it's quite profound, actually. It's the idea of limiting violence in human interactions.
Ah, reducing conflict.
Exactly. At its core, maybe a civilized world is one that develops ways, laws, norms, whatever, to promote peace, order, and solve disagreements without resorting to violence.
Okay, so that's the civilized world context. How does a civilized society fit in? It sounds like it drills down a bit more.
That's a good way to put it. It focuses more on the quality of life within a specific group, the interactions between people. The source calls it a society with a well-developed government, culture, and way of life that treats its people fairly.
And it gives that great example, libraries. Why libraries?
It's what they symbolize, isn't it? A commitment to education, to knowledge, making information accessible to lots of people. It says something about what that society values.
Beyond libraries, though, there are expectations about behavior, about maintaining order, right?
Absolutely. There's an expectation that the society will, prevent or punish unacceptable behavior to ensure some level of order and justice. You need systems for that, laws, enforcement.
And maybe something less tangible, a shared feeling.
Yeah, this source mentions a level of political consciousness, a shared national identity. It helps hold things together. And societies tend to refine their social norms, their rules for daily life over time.
So what are the absolute core values for a civilized society, according to the source?
Improving living standards for everyone. And crucially, freedom from fear and intimidation. People should feel safe, basically.
Right.
And philosophically, the source brings up the social contract idea.
Ah, the classic. People agreeing to be governed for protection.
Pretty much. The state provides governance, security, and in return, the people give their consent, they recognize its authority. This kind of reciprocal relationship is seen as key for social order, for civility.
And that recognition part is important, not just the government acting, but people accepting it.
Exactly. The source mentions thinkers like Weber and Bourdieu. It's about active and passive consent. People accepting the government, the borders, the institutions. That consent is what gives the state legitimacy and allows civility to flourish.
Okay, so if we scale that up, what about a civilized country? Is it just applying those society principles to a nation state?
Largely, yes. The definition is similar. Well-developed government, culture, fair treatment of people. But historically, civilized nations had a very specific and frankly problematic meaning in international law.
Right, you mentioned the bias. It was used to separate certain countries, wasn't it? European Christian ones.
Right.
What were the criteria back then?
Yeah, it was about whether they were seen to follow certain legal norms and had the institutions to enforce them. But judged through that specific European lens, things like having a published legal code, rule of law, basic rights, life, dignity, property.
And what got nations labeled uncivilized?
Practices seen as inhumane by that standard. Polygamy, slavery. Those were often used to classify nations outside that sphere as uncivilized. It shows the biases really clearly.
But thankfully, that view has changed. The source says that exclusionary approach is rejected now.
Absolutely. The modern consensus is much more that all nations should just be considered civilized by virtue of being recognized states. Those old references in things like the International Court of Justice statute, they're seen as outdated, incompatible with the UN Charter's idea of equal states.
So the focus isn't on ranking countries anymore. What's important now when we talk about a civilized country in the modern sense?
It's more about whether a country follows accepted international laws and norms, and importantly, whether it participates constructively in developing those international laws. It's about being a responsible member of the global community.
Okay, let's zoom right in now. The civilized individual. This feels like it's about personal ethics, how we behave.
Exactly. Philosophically, it's often seen as someone with a strong ethical compass. Not something you're born with, but developed through education, good habits, trying to live virtuously. That internal compass guides your actions, makes you care about others.
The source mentions Aristotle's concept of eleutherios. What's that about?
Right, eleutherios. For Aristotle, it's someone disposed towards virtue in thought and action. It's not just knowing what's right, but doing it through practice, through education. It involves practical wisdom, making good judgments, and moral excellence, that commitment to virtue.
And it goes deeper than just outward behavior, Aber Schweitzer's view.
Yeah, Schweitzer really emphasized the ethical perfecting of one's own character. It's an internal journey, striving for spiritual and ethical growth. And that inner development then shapes how you interact with the world.
What about older wisdom traditions, Confucianism, for example?
Many ancient traditions link being civilized or wise to living in harmony with reality, with the universe. Confucianism emphasizes key virtues: humaneness, righteousness, propriety, acting appropriately, wisdom, trustworthiness. Cultivating these helps you become a civilized person, contributing to a harmonious society.
So the idea of a civilized person has changed over time. It's not just about good manners anymore.
Exactly. Manners and self-restraint were part of it historically, sure. But today, it's broader. It includes moral and intellectual development. We expect a civilized person to be, cultured, polite, respectful, maybe have refined tastes, but also educated, understanding the world.
But at the end of the day, it comes back to how we relate to others, doesn't it? Our place in the community.
Absolutely. The real mark is recognizing you're part of something larger, acting with consideration for how your actions affect others, contributing to the community's well-being and harmony, understanding that your flourishing is tied to everyone else's.
Okay, if we put all these pieces together, world, society, country, individual, what would an ideal civilized world look like? What's the vision?
The source paints a picture of a global community guided by justice, equality, freedom, and well-being for everyone.
That's good.
Yeah, it means peaceful coexistence, real cooperation on global problems, climate change, pandemics, you name it, and upholding universal human rights and dignity for every single person.
And what core principles would need to be absolutely solid for that to work?
Several are key. A global commitment to human rights and dignity, equal opportunity, respect for all, protecting fundamental freedoms, speech, religion, assembly, but also basic rights like safety, security, a decent standard of living, and absolutely central, limiting violence in all forms, from personal fights to wars.
How would that kind of world be governed? What structures would we need?
You need global governance based on international law and real cooperation, effective ways to solve disputes peacefully, and ways to actually enforce international agreements. Within societies, justice and equality have to be priorities, fair laws, actively tackling systemic inequalities based on race, gender, income, whatever. And individual well-being has to be central: healthcare, education, social support seen as fundamental rights.
It's a compelling vision, but
Yeah.
wow, how do you actually build that? What are the essential components needed to make it real? Seems like a massive undertaking.
Oh, it's huge. And the source lists several critical ingredients. First, you need persuasive ethical ideas that really take hold globally, championed by influential people, embraced by societies, ideas that foster empathy, responsibility.
Don't just shared moral framework?
Sort of. Second, robust moral and legal systems at all levels, local, national, international, to guide behavior and ensure justice. Third, ethical development and use of advanced technology. Tech can be a tool for communication, solving problems, improving lives, but it has to be used responsibly.
Right.
Fourth, effective and accountable governments, fair, transparent policy, reliable law enforcement. And finally, aligning economic activity with sustainability and equity, making sure the economy supports culture and resources benefit everyone, now and in the future.
Now, the source admits no country is perfect, but it does suggest some nations show higher levels of civility. Where does it point us?
Well, it depends on how you measure it, right? The source mentions Microsoft's Digital Civility Index that focuses on online behavior. And interestingly, European countries like the Netherlands, Germany, France, the UK, Italy have ranked relatively high there recently. Gives a sense of online respectfulness.
But online is just one part of it, surely. For a bigger picture.
Exactly. For a broader view, the source highlights the Social Progress Index. That looks beyond just money, at basic human needs, well-being, opportunity. And consistently, the Nordic countries, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Iceland, they score really high on that index.
Why the Nordics? What makes them stand out in terms of social progress and maybe civility?
They generally have strong welfare systems,
Yeah.
good social safety nets, high quality of life. They also score very high on gender equality, equal rights, opportunities. There's often a culture of consensus building in their politics, strong democratic institutions, and a big emphasis on human rights, rule of law, government transparency. All that builds trust, social capital.
But it's important to remember perceptions can be subjective, right? And the source had that sobering point about WWII civility.
Yes, a really important caution. Outward order, politeness, that can mask terrible things. We have to look deeper than the surface. And as we said, online civility is just one slice of the pie.
The source included a table with social progress indicators for some of these high-ranking countries. What did that show?
Right, Table 1. It had 2024 data for Norway, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. countries often linked with high social progress and, by extension, civilized society. It broke down scores for things like basic human needs, well-being, opportunity, personal rights, inclusiveness.
And the takeaway, were they consistently high?
Very much so. They generally excel across the board, meeting basic needs, providing education, healthcare opportunities, and importantly, those high scores on personal rights and inclusiveness really underscore their commitment to respecting individuals, basic freedoms, and trying to build a fair, equitable society.
Okay, we've covered the world, society, country. Let's bring it back home to the individual. The source really hammers this point.
Yeah,
It all rests on us, on our character and behavior.
it really does. The civility of any group starts with the individuals in it. Developing personal virtues, being socially responsible, showing respect. That's the foundation.
The source talks about virtue ethics. Can you unpack that a bit? What virtues are key?
Virtue ethics focuses on developing good character traits. Instead of just rules or consequences, it asks, what kind of person should I be? Key virtues mentioned are things like honesty, kindness, courage, justice, temperance, moderation. These aren't just good for you, for your own flourishing, but they're essential for smooth, respectful interactions in society.
And how do we get these virtues? Are we born with them?
Mostly not. I mean, maybe we have tendencies, but virtue ethics sees it as something cultivated through practice, through habit. You choose to act virtuously again and again, and it becomes part of your character. You do the right thing because it is the right thing. And the source links this individual effort directly to the health of the whole society. Better people make a better society.
Beyond personal virtues, what about social responsibility? What does that look like in action?
It means recognizing you're connected to others, acting with the community's well-being in mind, following social norms that help cooperation and respect, sure, but also actively contributing to the common good.
Like civic virtue.
Exactly. Participating, supporting the state when it's legitimate, working for the public good.
And respecting differences, that seems crucial.
Absolutely. Respecting others' rights and views, even when you strongly disagree. Engaging in respectful dialogue, not just shouting matches. A civilized individual understands their well-being is tied to the communities and acts responsibly to make society more just and harmonious for everyone.
Looking ahead, the source brings in AI, artificial intelligence, both potential benefits and some serious things to watch out for.
Yeah, AI is a huge factor now. It can massively boost efficiency, personalize services, help solve huge problems, potentially improve well-being, and tackle global challenges.
Can you give some concrete examples? How could AI help build a more civilized world?
Sure. Think healthcare. Better diagnostics, personalized treatments, faster drug discovery maybe, by analyzing massive data sets.
Okay.
Education. AI could tailor learning to each student's pace and needs. Environment. Monitoring deforestation, tracking wildlife, analyzing climate data to inform policy.
Right.
Governance. Better data analysis for planning, more personalized public services, smarter cities. Economy. Driving productivity, innovation, maybe new jobs too. Social issues. AI might help analyze poverty or inequality to create more targeted solutions. And importantly, there's a push to develop AI ethically focusing on human rights, inclusion, transparency, which aligns with civilized values.
And it's a big but. We can't just let AI run wild, can we? What safeguards does the source say are absolutely essential?
No, definitely not. The source is clear. AI development must be guided by strong ethical principles from the start. Prioritizing human rights, preventing harm, ensuring benefits are shared fairly.
So rules and regulations.
Yes, clear ethical guidelines and regulations, nationally and internationally. Fairness and non-discrimination have to be built in to avoid amplifying existing biases. Transparency is key. We need to understand how AI makes decisions for trust and accountability.
Makes sense.
Robust safety and security are non-negotiable. We need human oversight, keeping AI aligned with our values and goals. Sustainability needs to be considered too. And we have to proactively address the risks, job losses, privacy issues, unintended consequences. We need plans to mitigate those.
Which brings us back to education. It seems vital for shaping individuals who can navigate all this, fostering civilized values from the start. The source sees it as a lifelong thing.
Absolutely. Not just something you learned in school and you're done. Early childhood is foundational basic social skills. Awareness of others.
The source even breaks it down by age. What are the key focuses?
Yeah, it's quite practical. Ages 1 to 2, introducing those magic words, please, excuse me. Basic politeness.
Okay.
Ages 3 to 6. Focusing on positive interactions, sharing, taking turns, listening skills.
Core social skills.
Right. Ages 7 to 10. Teaching graciousness, winning and losing, empathy, good sportsmanship. Ages 11 13. Learning more nuanced things like being a good guest, respecting different rules in different places. Exactly. And teens, 14, 18, reinforcing respect for adults, being punctual, responsible tech use. That's huge now.
Beyond those specific skills, what about broader character and ethics education?
That's critical. Structured character education, integrating ethics and social responsibility. Teaching core values, respect, responsibility, empathy, integrity, courage, citizenship through discussion activities.
And role models?
Crucial.
Yeah.
Adults modeling ethical behavior. Using stories with moral dilemmas, creating a positive school culture.
Yeah.
And developing critical thinking about ethics, not just what is right, but why.
And fostering social responsibility, that's about understanding your impact, right? Connecting to the community.
Yes, understanding how your actions affect others, the environment, the wider community. Feeling a sense of duty. You can do that by raising awareness of the world, encouraging reflection, promoting empathy, providing volunteering opportunities, even simple things, acts of kindness, discussing current events, chores with a purpose. They all build that sense.
But it's not all about teaching, is it? The source mentions nature, nurture, circumstances. It's complex.
It's definitely complex. Our social skills, our tendency to be helpful, it's a mix of our genes and our environment, nature and nurture interacting. Genetics might give us tendencies, but our environment hugely shapes how those develop.
And biology itself played a role.
Seems so. Things like walking upright, having complex brains, they enabled the social structures and cultures we have. But circumstances matter too. Stress, inequality, political division, they can all impact how civil a society feels. And education, a healthy environment, they're vital supports for civility.
Okay, last big area. The source asks, where did civilization begin? And can it end? That's a bit heavy.
It is a profound question. Historically, civilization is linked to settled farming. Surplus food allowed specialization, cities, complex societies to grow. The earliest ones popped up in fertile river valleys.
The cradles of civilization.
Exactly. Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, China, the Andes, Mesoamerica, places where complex societies emerged independently. Key markers were things like writing, state structures, organized religion.
And the boundaries of civilization, not always neat lines on a map.
No. It's complex. Is it geography or shared culture, values, beliefs? Hunnigan's clash of civilizations theory focused on these cultural blocks defined by history, language, religion, potentially clashing.
And the unsettling part, could civilization have limits? Could it end?
The source suggests sustainability is key. Can a civilization manage its environment, ensure social justice, handle technology responsibly? The Mayans are often cited as an example. Environmental mismanagement likely contributed to their decline. It's a reminder it's not necessarily a one-way street upwards.
Sobering thought.
And modern challenges, climate change, resource depletion, they really highlight the planet's limits. We need responsible stewardship to ensure a civilized future.
Wow, we've covered a lot. This has been a really fascinating deep dive. If you had to boil it down, what's the main takeaway?
I think it's that pursuing a civilized world is this ongoing, multi-level effort. It's not just about governments or technology. It's about individuals, societies, nations, the whole globe working at it. Defining it means grappling with history, acknowledging biases, but focusing on universal values, human rights, justice, equality, well-being.
Right.
We could look at examples like the Nordics, but the real foundation is individual character, built through education, responsibility, respect. AI can help, but only if we guide it ethically. Ultimately, it takes commitment to these principles and recognizing we're all interconnected. The boundaries of civilized aren't fixed. We're shaping them right now by how we tackle global challenges and treat each other.
That's a powerful summary. And it leaves us with a final thought for you, our listener. Considering history, the rise and fall, and today's challenges, what's your part? What can you do in your own life to help build and sustain a more civilized future? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
This is DigitView.